Hello, and welcome to Women in Business, where we interview entrepreneurs and senior managers and show you the strengths, successes, obstacles, and roadblocks women experience in business. Since I believe every person in business needs to be visible, I'd like to invite you to watch www.sob6, that's the number 6, tips.com, which will give you some valuable information should you get the call to be on radio or TV, which I think is extremely important. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at Gayle Carson, that's Gayle, Gayle Carson 13 at gmail.com, or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. Hi, everyone. My guest today is Tiffany Beverlin. Tiffany is the founder and CEO of DreamsRecycled.com. After her own divorce was forced to recycle her life, she repeatedly was told she was unemployable since she was out of the workforce for so long. How many people have heard that, right? After a fortuitous dream about problem selling her own engagement ring, she created her company for that purpose. DreamsRecycled.com started as the only marketplace that specialized in selling goods from one's divorce. Today, the site consists of the marketplace, articles, secondary divorce services directory, and a great interactive community. Tiffany has appeared on AOL News, Fox News, CBS News, and dozens of national publications and radio shows, bestowing hard-hitting advice on divorce. She's also the author of My Dreams Recycled and a certified life coach. Welcome, Tiffany.
Why, thank you, Gayle. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing great, but you know something, I have heard so many stories about women who have been in the situation that you were in and then having to do things like sell their engagement ring, et cetera, et cetera. So what made you and how did you create a company from your own adversity?
Well, I would say I'm just really good at everything, but unfortunately that's not the case. I think after my divorce, like most people, you don't really have a plan B. You just, you do what's best for your family and your children at the time, and you don't really have that foresight to think, okay, what if this ends? What if this goes wrong? And so I was, as you said, in a situation that many, many people are in, that they have gaps in their resume. I had been a stay-at-home mom for a decade, and I was literally told by multiple recruiters that I was unemployable. And so I really had to kind of think outside the box, which I think a lot of people are kind of forced to do.
Well, it's interesting. I think that, I think people should think outside the box anyway, but you're right. I mean, people don't go into a marriage saying, oh, well, what's going to happen if this ends? However, I do think it's really important for all women to always keep their, not necessarily just their skill level up, but their knowledge level up of what's going on, because being a mom and running a household is a business in itself, and people have got to learn how to position that. But do you feel that you've always been positive, you've always been happy, or did you feel as if you were so overwhelmed you didn't know what to do next?
Well, definitely at the beginning, I felt ridiculously overwhelmed. I think when you go through any kind of life-changing situation and had, a nice big heaping of adversity, you do tend to kind of fall at the very beginning into that victim mentality where you're like, why me? This isn't fair. How did this happen? What am I going to do? And so, I think that's part of the grieving process of any kind of adversity. And so you have to kind of let yourself feel those emotions for a short period of time. And then literally it was almost like a light bulb went off or a switch went off. And I was like, okay, this is the hand I'm dealt. This is what's going to happen. And I have to make the very best out of a bad situation. And so that's exactly what I did. I literally dreamt the idea for my company. At the time, I had no tech knowledge, no tech skills, but I really felt like, as you said, it was something that applied to an awful lot of people. there are close to almost 2 million people a year in America that get divorced. And that's a lot of, obviously, wedding rings, wedding dresses, bedroom sets, etc., that people want to get rid of when they're trying to create a new life. And I really kind of had to kind of make myself choose a positive mindset and an optimistic mindset and go, okay, I'm going to throw myself 100% into trying to do this and making it work. And the funny thing about that is optimism or positivity is literally like a muscle. The more you use it, the better you get at it.
And well, so I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But you hear all these stories, Tiffany, about the woman got everything in the divorce. She took the man to the cleaners. The guy is now living in a one room in a rooming house or a hotel. He has nothing. But there are a lot of women like you who've been left with how am I going to support myself kind of thing. So what do you think is the key to seeing the bright side in something negative that happens to you?
I think, as sad as this is, I think the thing that helps more people than not is the mindset that it could be worse, right? Unfortunately, it could be worse. And I always tell the story that, if you walk into a room and everyone piled all their problems into the middle of the room, you'd probably take your own setback.
Great analogy. I like that. That's true. And yet, so was there no cooperation in your divorce at all? I mean, did your husband not contribute at all to the lifestyle of you or the kids or anything else?
Well, no, obviously there are laws in Florida that it's a 50-50 state, etc. But I have, at the time I had 3 children, and alimony is not lifetime in Florida anymore. And I wasn't, it was a long-term marriage, but it wasn't a lifetime marriage. It was only 16 years. And in Florida, it's 22 now, I think, when it turns into lifetime. And so, plus, and I'm going to say this for all women out there, as you said, it's good to be financially independent anyway. No matter what situation you're in.
I was so lucky. My mom, who was not born in this era, and never finished high school, because at that time you left school to send your brother to college, always told my sister and I, it's important you have your education and you must make your own living. Never depend on a man to support you. And neither my sister nor I ever did. We always kind of earned our own way. So we were very fortunate because, of course, I was lucky because I always wanted to work anyway. But what kind of tips would you give to our listeners on how to create a happy mindset? Because I'm sure you had to go through a period of, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Why is this happening to me? So what did you do to create this mindset of happiness?
Well, I'm a big believer in actual practical action. I think, there are a lot of people out there saying choose happy and think more positive thoughts, etc. But really, I think the easiest and the best way to create that kind of atmosphere is to do positive things. And so whether it's reaching out to somebody else and helping them, as I said, there are always people, worse off. Go volunteer at hospice or a homeless shelter or a, battered women's shelter, etc. And you very quickly see that your life probably isn't as bad as you thought it was. And so that's a practical thing we all have the power to do, is to reach out and help someone else. And then the big thing that I always advocate for anyone in any life's, changing situation is, one of the things that is so bothersome about it is the feeling that you don't have control over the changes that are kind of being inflicted on you. So whether it's job loss, divorce, illness, etc. And so I advocate that everybody gets out a pen and paper and they write a list of everything they actually still have the power to change in their life. And when you write that down on a piece of paper, you realize that you actually do have more control over the things moving forward in the life you want to create moving forward than you really think you do. And when you start to see how much power you actually have, and you start to take those daily positive steps, and it can be anything. It can be like going to the gym or getting a new hairstyle or going to a different church, or, I mean, it could be anything. But once you start to take control of the choices you're making and the people you're surrounding yourself with, life gets better pretty quickly.
You know, I think that's amazing, Tiffany, because I can see when all of this is coming down around you, the big word you used was control. And
Mhm.
when you feel you have no control, that's really devastating. It's just devastating. And
Mhm.
so I know that it just puts you in this funk. And the fact that you can sit down and actually write, gee, what's good? What do I have that's good? And I think the points that you made about take a walk to those homeless shelters, or take a walk to the hospital, or take a walk to the abused women's shelter, you're going to feel a whole lot different, you know, than you do when you have all of these things happening to you. But do you believe that things happen for a reason? I know at the time you probably didn't. I mean, did your divorce come as a shock, or was it something you kind of saw was happening?
I think it's a little bit of both. I talk to a lot of divorcees, I coach a lot of divorcees, and I think there's at least a year or two period at the end of any, kind of longer term marriage that you kind of know that things aren't going well, that nobody's happy, like it's becomes really hard to act constantly in front of everyone as the happy family and in front of your children and your friends and family, etc. And so I think it's a mixture, but still, when it happens, it's still shocking because it's such a life-changing experience. You go from being a we to an I again. Most of us, get married in our 20s. So if you've been married 10, 20 years, etc., that's pretty much your whole entire adult life you've been with someone. And so it's really hard to recycle your life, and divorce is the only time that you're forced to recycle your life emotionally, relationship wise, and then child custody completely changes, your living situation completely changes, your financial situation completely changes, maybe you have to move house as well, and you're navigating all of that while you're trying to parent your children and try and figure out what you're doing with your life. And so it's a lot for anyone.
Well, I would assume so, you know, and I would think in talking to the women who you are coaching, well, this is interesting. Do you coach? It'd be interesting to find out if you coach men as well as women. Now, women, I can see when they get divorced, they really want someone to help them to negotiate. I'm wondering if you run into any men like that.
I do actually. 50% of my clients are men.
Interesting. So, what
Yeah.
do they say to you as opposed to what the women say to you? I know it's got to be different because their dialogue is different.
Right. And it's a very interesting difference. So, women, we're much better at connecting to other people and, in touch with our emotions. And we can sit with our friends on our sofa and have a glass of wine and cry and talk about how awful everything is. But men often actually feel that they have to bottle everything up and put on the stoic kind of a brave face, go to work. They're still usually the breadwinner. And they still have to kind of, not look like that to their employees or their co-workers or whoever it is or their bosses. And it's a different kind of pressure on a man. And if you know anything about divorce statistically, men get married a lot quicker after their divorce,
Yes.
almost like,
Yeah.
And so there's a certain element to that men, even though they seem a lot kind of hardier emotionally, we're all the same. Divorce hurts, heartbreak hurts. And a lot of men, especially, feel they're better off with someone in their life.
So when men, when you're working with men, whereas the women are, well, let's say this, in a women's situation, many times it's the man who initiates the divorce, which is why the women are so devastated. In a man's situation, is it the woman who has initiated the divorce, or is it the man?
It could be either. I mean, I think there's too many different variations, but technically, almost 8 out of 10 divorces are actually filed by women, not men. But it doesn't necessarily matter who filed, because you don't know what came up until that point. You don't know if, the woman filed because she's been cheated on 18 times in the last 4 years, right? Or, did the man file because he's found somebody else? There's too many different permutations.
That's interesting. So what do you think is the most important factor in choosing a partner?
Honestly, I had completely different views before I started doing this for a living. So, yeah. So I would have told you before I did this for a living, I would have told you, love can conquer all. And if you just try and, all those cliche things. But now I've spoke to over 6,000 divorcees, both men and women. And honestly, my theory is my theory, and people can believe it or not. But the thing that keeps you together more than anything is respect and friendship. And in my opinion, it beats looks, money, power, love, or any of the other things that seem more kind of powerful. Just being around somebody that you actually like, and you like to do the same things, and you like to go the same places, and you enjoy each other's company, and you're kind to each other, that seems to be more of a defining factor than anything else.
That's so funny, because I was married for 45 years before my husband passed away. And I always said that you can love a lot of people, but you can't necessarily live with a lot of people. And the one thing that I really adored about my husband was that I really liked him. I liked the person he was. I liked how he handled things. I liked the father he was, the husband he was. I mean, there was just so much to like about him. And I think that made a big difference when there came to, because naturally you have arguments. Everything is not wonderful all day, every day. But what do you think is lacking in most people today as far as a trait is concerned? I mean, what do you think I don't know, how would you categorize that?
Well, I think that people are very shallow. And I mean, this causes them to make poor choices. And you have to remember that looks are not forever, youth is not forever, money is not forever. In any long-term marriage, I'm sure you know this, there'll be some kind of adversity. And if you can't figure it out or look at each other and still like each other or work towards the same goals, you probably are going to end up in divorce court.
Well, that's true. So what? How do you think people can use adversity as a way to create a better life?
Well, I think anyone who has any kind of adversity, you by nature, you should always look for some kind of silver lining or some kind of positive that can come out of it. And granted, in some cases, there really isn't much upside, except for the, knowing that you survived that, you can probably survive anything. And so yeah, but that becomes.
If you can survive that, you can survive anything. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, but that kind of becomes your superpower. Everything else doesn't seem so fearful. I probably would never have taken the chance to start a company, in an industry that I knew nothing about at the time, and with no technical skills or qualifications or education in that area. I don't think I would have done that before my divorce. It would have seemed too, risky. I would have been too afraid to fail, too afraid that, it wouldn't go well, etc. And so I think adversity does give you kind of a superpower that you go, you know what? Something bad happened and I survived it. If something else, doesn't go how it's supposed to, I'll survive that too.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, most of us are survivors, and so we figure out a way to do it. But how did you learn to do what you do? And how do people find out about you? And I mean, it's one thing to sell your engagement ring. It's another thing to do what you have to do to keep going. But to start a business like this, how did you get your knowledge, and how do people find you?
Well, luckily, the internet is worldwide, and I started my company. I didn't know at the time how to build a website or anything, so obviously I hired somebody to do that. But since then, and that was 6 years ago, and I'm a big advocate of this. If you have anything you want to know in the world, Google it, right? The information is out there. It's free. If you have an interest in it, and you can figure it out. And so I literally learned everything I needed to know from the internet, whether it was marketing, branding, web traffic, social media, LinkedIn, how to build a website, coaching. It doesn't matter what it was. I'm 100% self-taught. And I think that nowadays, honestly, anyone can do what I've done. I don't think I'm particularly special. I think I just worked hard. And I think that if you have an interest in something, you can find the information and you can figure it out.
Well, I still think it's very brave. I think it's very amazing that you have done everything that you've done, because to me, it's still not that simple to have that happen. So what is your website? Where can people find out about you, Tiffany?
Well, they can find us at dreamsrecycled.com. And then when they get there, there's multitude of services we offer for our divorcees. All the services are free. And they can come and get information, advice, join our community, connect with other divorcees, sell their engagement rings and everything else. And we try and make it a really one-stop shop that's positive and upbeat and informative for men and women. So, people feel not like I did when I went through my divorce, that you were by yourself, but there's always someone else who's out there kind of in the same situation. And I think sometimes that's what we need more than anything, is knowing that, we are going to survive and we're not alone on this journey.
So if people want to find out about your services, they would go to Dreams, that's plural, Dreams Recycled, RECYCLED, dreamsrecycled.com. And you provide coaching and you provide printed material. Tell us exactly what people can find on your website.
Wow, there's so many resources now. We have thousands of articles written by divorce experts, everything from insurance to finances to legal to emotional to co-parenting to dealing with narcissistic exes and everything else you can imagine. And that's all obviously under the article section. In the community section, you can connect with other people. And then we also have checklists and financial checklists for people who are at the beginning of the process, who feel like completely overwhelmed because there's a lot to it at the beginning especially, and they can download those PDFs and get those checklists free as well on our website.
Well, I'm looking and I'm thinking this is, I just think it's a marvelous resource, because I know when people go through this and they they're really lost, Tiffany. They're really lost. I mean, they're in shock is what they are. And it's hard to make a move when you're in shock and you don't know what the next step is. So the fact that you've got all these resources for them, and the fact that they can get financial information, legal information, just so many different areas. I just think it's fantastic. So where is Tiffany going from here? What do you see for yourself in the next many years?
Wow, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to obviously continue expanding and scaling Dreams Recycled. Maybe you've realized I'm not actually American, I'm English. So even though I live here, I've been here many years. I'd love to expand it to United Kingdom, Australia, other English-speaking countries, because heartbreak is universal, and the more people we can help, the better.
But don't we lead the countries in divorces? Doesn't the United States have? Yeah, this is like a golden opportunity for you, Tiffany, because I don't think people get divorced in as much in the other countries as we do here. I don't know if it's because it's easier or we've got a different mentality or what it is, but
it's partly because we marry more. A lot of European countries, less people are getting married, and so it's partly skewed by that. that we're still a pretty conservative country that, in America that believes in marriage and family, etc. And so, more people go into it. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Oh, Tiffany, it has been delightful. I hope people get in touch with you, because if anybody's listening to this and you're going through a divorce, even though you say, well, I'm not sure what Tiffany can offer, go to her website, see what she has. DreamsRecycled.com. She has information for you. Even if you don't hire her, go there, see what she's got. She's a wealth of information, and she's going to cut your curve down for what you have to go through to at least half. I mean, it's just marvelous what she's doing. So I just want to thank you so much for being with us, Tiffany, because I think you're providing a well-needed service. And I hope that well, in a way, I hope your business doesn't grow, because that would mean less people getting divorced. But for you personally, I hope that it does get to where you want to go, and that you do get to go into other countries. So thank you so much for being with us today. I really, really appreciate it. And I know our listeners did too.
No, thank you. You've been delightful. Thank you so much for having me on your wonderful show.
Thanks for listening to Women in Business. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And if you have any suggestions as to who you'd like me to have as a guest, just email me at GayleCarson13@gmail.com. Be sure to check out www.sob6tips.com. And in the meantime, go to www.spunkyoldbroad.com to see the resources I have for you.